The Human-Demon Great War, the situation of Merazofis. You don't have to be crazy to work here, but it helps. The man known as Merazofis is an ordinary person. Though his subordinates amongst the demons would surely be laugh in disbelief if they heard that. Who could possibly call a man with enough strength to single-handedly overturn the course of a battle ordinary of all things? Even still, he was undoubtedly an ordinary person. He was merely an ordinary person who had experienced an extraordinary life. He has no special talent. No matter what he did, he was average, saying that the other way around, he could do everything to an average level. To put it in a positive way, he could do anything. I love this. I love this fucking... Oh, I love when writing has trends, or themes, or interesting repetition. Just a complete break from absolutely everything. This is cool. This is cool. The positive way, negative way thing. I feel like that's happened in a lot of little ways. Like, repetition can be done really well and in really interesting ways. As a person, I don't usually like repetitive things, but this is cool. This kind of writing is really cool. Anyway, back to the story. To put it in a negative way, the jack of all trades and master of none. With that versatility that allowed him to be an average at everything, he acquired various skills. The sequence of events that led him to being like that relates to his childhood. He came from a family that had served a certain noble house for generations, and naturally it was decided that he would also serve that noble house. There he had a fateful encounter. It was with the young lady of that noble house. For her and Merazofis, they did not start out their relationship as master and servant, but growing up as childhood friends. During that stage, he had faint feelings of love towards the young lady. However, that was impossible love. Since she was a child, she had a fiancé, and on top of that, she and her fiancé were born in love with each other. There was no room for him between them. He didn't even think of coming between them. For him, as long as the person he loved was happy, then he was content. So that he could aid her, Merazofis continued to improve himself. Whenever he had time, he would indiscriminately improve his skills in anything that seemed useful, making an effort to study. That work was recognized, and he was even trusted by her fiancé. Thus, when she married into her fiancé's house, he went with her. Her fiancé was aware of Merazofis' feelings, precisely because he trusted Merazofis. Fiancé. Because he was confident that Merazofis would never make her sad. Between the two men who loved the same woman, perhaps there was some kind of understanding. Precisely because of that, he was entrusted with their beloved daughter. It was already too late, because the woman he loved and her husband there was nowhere to escape between. Physically and mentally, he was trapped. That daughter was entrusted to the highly dependable Merazofis. Merazofis accepted those feelings. Even if he couldn't protect his beloved woman, even while enduring his own powerlessness, he would still protect that woman's daughter. He steadfastly vowed. Even with that vow was soon crushed. He wasn't able to do anything. Without being able to do anything, the end result was that he gained power from the one he should have been protecting. Even after throwing away his humanity, he was still overwhelmed by his powerlessness. After that occasion, when he was hopelessly beaten down by the bandits, he never failed to practice swinging his sword every morning. That would never make him dramatically stronger. Even still, wanting to reform his powerless self, even a little bit, so that the next time he would be able to protect them, he put all his soul into continuing to swing. Even all that effort never bore the fruit in the end, and no matter how he struggled, Merazofis was an ordinary person. He wasn't at all suited for fighting right from the very start, so waving a sword around when he had no talent wouldn't be enough for him to protect anything. And yet he didn't die. Once again, he was saved by a certain spider, or perhaps in a way, he had already died at that time. He had lost his precious and beloved sweetheart. Afterwards, his life was spent protecting the child of the woman he loved, to watch over her development, to be beside her. However, Merazofis' Ojo-sama was no ordinary person, a reincarnator and not even human, a vampire progenitor, right? I don't know. Merazofis himself became a vampire as well due to that Ojo-sama. Compared to the normal humans of this world, reincarnators have more ways in which to increase their status values and skills. In addition, the Ojo-sama was forced to go on a rigorous journey when she was an infant, forcing her status values to grow. The time when status values grow the fastest is during infancy. The growth rate of those values falls together with the overall growth rates as one reaches adulthood. During her infancy, the Ojo-sama was put through a harsh environment that would normally be unthinkable, that could even be called abuse, resulting in her status values growing at a rate that vastly exceeded those of even of her fellow reincarnators. Merazofis' status values, who was put through the same environment, also grew at a slower rate than Ojo-sama's. The cause was due to him being a person of this world, and one who had already reached adulthood. Due to him being reborn as a vampire, his status values grew faster than when he was a human, but from the perspective of the irregular Ojosama, even that was more like a minor blip in the measurements. Eventually, Merazofis became weaker than even the Ojosama he was supposed to protect. Even so, what Merazofis needed to do did not change. When they were separated by the Demon King so they wouldn't become too dependent upon each other, his thoughts were focused on the Ojosama. To protect the Ojosama, nothing more. Therefore, he needed to be strong. The Ojosama already possessed a strength that he could never reach. While that might be true, that in no way implied that it was unnecessary for him to become strong. At the very least, he needed to be strong enough so that he wouldn't hold the Ojosama back. And thus Merazofis never failed to train himself every day. That training was so harsh in practice, in that it would make an average person doubt their own eyes. Even that for an average person, the other they would quickly damage their own health or harm their own mind. What allowed him to do that was the experiences from the harsh journey along the way to the demon territories. The aberrant training conducted by an aberrant spider, using the skills that he had gained while training during that journey to the Fool. Merazofis continued to put himself through the hellish personal training. Without himself realizing it, he had strayed from the common sense. I'm hungry. By using the abnormal condition nullity skill, he no longer needed to sleep. By using the automatic recovery of HP and MP, he didn't spare himself from even damaging his body. When he damaged it, he took joy from being able to raise his treatment magic skill level. Even in the midst of work, he devoted himself to strengthening skills that could make no sense to others, like magic manipulation and fighting spirit. Eventually, Merazofis' average status values had risen as far as 5,000. Such values were more than enough to be on par with a low-ranked dragon. The level of strength that would be more than sufficient for this world, but even that did not satisfy him, because the Ojo-sama had about triple that. Report to Balto-sama. Yes, sir. Merazofis sent a subordinate to report on the defeat. Even for Merazofis as an individual, considering the overall battlefield, the battle was a defeat. The circumstances were bad. Having to fight 2 reincarnators with support from a human mage of the highest class. On top of facing the 3 of them, it was a clear day with bright sunshine. There was no way he could kill the reincarnators. While being weakened by the sunlight, he had to fight his opponents without killing them. That was quite a difficult order to make of an ordinary person with no talent for battle. Therefore, despite having an advantage in status values over his opponent, the fight dragged on. He couldn't even assist with the worsening conditions of the battlefield. It is certainly true that both reincarnators were strong, whereas Merazofis also retained the appraisal skill. Oh, okay, never mind. That was the spider's policy, and because of its usefulness, he also kept it up for many months and years, slowly raising the level. The status values of the reincarnators, as seen with the appraisal, were in the top-ranked Drake class. Considering their skills, it was even conceivable that they could reach the bottom-ranked dragons. The boy was physically oriented and had average status values of about 2,500. The girl was more magically oriented, but had average status values of about 2,500. Status values don't simply add up together, but those two combined had values about equal to Merazofis. In addition, there was supporting magic being fired. Appraisal couldn't be used because of the distance, but Merazofis estimated the magic offensive ability was probably at least 2,000. For humans, the line that determines whether they're top class or not is having status of 1,000. Having to face 3 opponents with well over that, it can be understood why Merazofis was having a hard fight. Actually, before Merazofis became their opponent, the 2 reincarnates were routing the demon troops, and the mage was using great magic to cause massive damage. Without being able to rally the troops from the damage those 3 had caused, losing the battle could be considered good enough. Commander, you were injured. It's just a scratch. Merazofis' chest had been pierced. Due to carelessness at the very end, he was sniped. But, as he himself said, after penetrating the armor, the damage to the body itself was nothing more than a scratch. Merazofis' magical defense ability was roughly 5,000. Even when suffering a direct hit from that magic, it only pierced his skin and didn't even reach his heart. Then again, even if it had reached his heart, that probably wouldn't have been enough to defeat Merazofis. I still have a long way to go. As for his muttering, his subordinates ignored it with a faraway look. The man known as Merazofis is an ordinary person. He did not have a single outstanding talent. However, if there was one talent he could be said to possess, that was the talent to endure. The talent of hard work was not enough. Having surpassed the likes of hard work by reaching hell, that's what he was now. Who on earth would keep on deliberately tormenting himself until on the brink of death every day? To say that someone who would do that as having the talent of hard work seems somewhat insufficient. As an example of that, there is a certain skill he has recently obtained, the skill called patience. The man known as Merazofis is an ordinary person. However, it is not always the case that an ordinary person stays ordinary, as seen in his story. Right, yeah. Cool. Notes and things. All right, cool. I was like, I like pause at the end. I'll probably cut out the pause because I'm pausing to read, but I'll probably shorten those down. Uh, anyway, yeah, Merazofis is cool. He's a cool dude. Also, this chapter was in third person, not first person, because it talked about Merazofis, not from the perspective of Merazofis, which is interesting. That's just not very common for this novel, which is neat. But yep.